asexual reproduction, or the process of making babies without doing the dirty. It is very common in multiple branches of the tree of life, such as largely in bacteria, where there's a cell and it splits into two cells. That's asexual reproduction. It's also pretty common in invertebrate species such as flatworms like this planaria, or in different types of worms like nematodes or earthworms, etc., where like if you cut them in half, they just turn into two new worms. However, when you hear asexual reproduction, you want to know what you don't think of? Fucking turkeys. That's when someone mentions asexual reproduction, the first animal that I think of is not, a wild turkey. But yes, in fact, turkeys are capable of reproducing via asexual reproduction. So how this happens is it's not the same as other forms of asexual reproduction. If you cut a turkey in half, it will not turn into two new turkeys. That's not how it works. But it happens via a process called Parthenogenesis. So Parthenogenesis is also common in a bunch of invertebrate species such as tardigrades or nematodes, which, you know, that makes sense. Like, of course, they're already weird little guys. Why not add weird asexual reproduction? So basically, what happens in certain animal species is there are conditions in which sexual reproduction is not favorable. So perhaps environmental conditions, or even just there are no males of that species available for reproduction at that moment. So then what happens is that the females are basically capable of developing their own embryos out of their eggs. So in the case of like tardigrades, there's these female eggs, and instead of getting fertilized by a male, they just develop into an embryo basically on their own. Now, depending on the species, this can result in only female offspring, only male offspring, or a mix of both, depending on the species, and like just kind of what happens. Now, again, in invertebrates like worms and tardigrades, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, they're weird little guys. But it can also happen in other things. So, the aforementioned turkey, they can do parthenogenesis if they deem it necessary, I guess. So in the case of turkeys, so far it has only been observed that parthenogenesis results in male offspring, which then makes sense because if they have to do parthenogenesis due to lack of available males, if there is a resulting males, then that re-delivers the, males back into the species and are therefore available to reproduce. This is also true in the case of Komodo dragons, another parthenogenic species, and this happens because the female Komodo dragons have a genotype of WZ, where males only have ZZ, and since the females are the only ones capable of parthenogenesis, then the eggs produced are either WW or ZZ, but the WW eggs are not viable, so only the ZZ ones end up hatching, and those are the males. And parthenogenesis is relatively common in other reptile species, such as other types of lizards and some snakes. Many fish are also capable of parthenogenesis, including sharks as some of the most common ones, such as this black tip shark. And there's this kind of, trend of news articles being like, virgin shark birth in the aquarium, because some of the aquarium sharks gave birth via parthenogenesis, and they're like, there's no males in there, oh my goodness. So yeah, but often parthenogenesis is kind of a last resort when no other reproduction options are available. This is due to the lack of genetic diversity in the offspring because they're only getting the mother's genes, so are therefore less genetically diverse, and that's not something we really want. So the offspring produced tend to be kind of weaker, sicklier, and just less healthy overall. And so this is really a kind of last resort when no other options are available, because it produces kind of weak cringe fail offspring. But it does do the job and allows for reproduction to occur, which, like, that is kind of the main point of everything, is to reproduce. So it's not great, but it works. It gets the job done. So, going back to the virgin birth, just want to leave off with a little something to think about. Parthenogenesis, everybody.